Congressman Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont. When you looked at the newspapers this morning and saw that the stories were saying that the trade status for China was going to pass today, did you believe them?
No, I think it's very likely. Corporate America has been spending tens and tens of millions of dollars trying to get this passed. And when corporate America, which has contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to both political parties, speaks, most members of Congress, unfortunately, listen. That's the reality of American politics today. It's not good, but that is the reality, so I'm not surprised.
Do you think that there was ever a time in which your side could have won?
I don't look at it like that. I think that basically we have a country now where most people have given up on the political process. Most people no longer vote. We have a great divide between the wealthy and the poor. Many of our people are working longer hours for lower wages. And I think that this trade agreement is a bad deal for the American working people. And I think the heart and soul of what this agreement is about, and the reason that corporate America is putting so much money into it, is ultimately what they want to see is our workers forced to compete against the desperate people in China who work for 10, 15, or 20 cents an hour. So what will happen is there will be an acceleration of our trade deficit where companies in this country will close down their plants, take their plants to China, and have a climate in China where you're paying people not only starvation wages, but these people who stand up for their rights in China, who want to form a union, for example, they get thrown in jail. If they protest against government policy, they get thrown in jail. So I guess for corporate America, that's a great place to do business. You can hire people for starvation wages. They can't stand up for their rights. You can pay them substantially lower than you can pay American workers. So I can understand why corporate America is spending so much money trying to get this agreement passed. But I think what we should understand is that right now, today, the trade deficit with China is $68 billion. It is costing us hundreds and hundreds of thousands of decent-paying jobs. And the estimate is that if this permanent trade agreement goes through, that trade deficit will only accelerate and grow wider. I hear a whole lot of talk about how the economy is booming. But the reality is that today, for tens of millions of American workers, they're working longer hours for lower wages. And in fact, the economy is booming for the people on top. So we now have the wealthiest 1% of the population owning more wealth than the bottom 95%, and the greatest gap between the haves and the have-nots of any industrialized country. So I think that for ordinary people, this is a bad trade agreement. I can understand why corporate America likes it. For them, it is pretty good. But when we look at who's fighting this issue, you find that corporate America is on one side. You got trade unions representing 15 million workers on the other side. You have environmental groups who are very concerned about what's happening in the environment in China, what that means for the world environment. You have human rights groups and religious groups like the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops who are saying, how are we having a permanent trade agreement with a country that does not tolerate religious freedom, which throws Catholic bishops in jail, which has suppressed Tibet? Why should we give up our leverage of an annual review? You have veterans organizations like the American Legion, the VFW, and others who are concerned about issues of national security. And I think what all of them are saying is that we should not abandon the leverage that we now have with an annual review. So those are my thoughts.
Phone lines, again, divided for and against this treaty, which comes up before the vote today. First call, Laurel, Maryland, for the treaty.